Welcome traders, and welcome to this week's Mastering the Markets with me, Matt. I'm a senior analyst at Prime XBT, and I'm super excited to be here with you guys today. So let's jump into it. We've got a couple of fundamentals that are coming out in the next 15 minutes or so. So it's going to be quite an exciting and interesting stream. We should be able to catch a bit of volatility going into that session. So I'm quite keen to show you guys a bit about that. Now today's stream is going to be primarily based around actually the altcoin season and what is currently happening that side. So we're going to be diving into a bit more cryptocurrency sort of esque rather than say the actual normal global market stuff. But I thought we'll just cover a bit of what is actually going on and what we can expect for the rest of the week. Now today we actually have ADP's non-farm employment rate change. Now this isn't going to be exactly the same as non-farm employment rate change. However, it is quite a nice sort of indicator. It gives us a little bit of sort of confirmation as to what the data results may look like for Friday. So let's keep an eye out on what is exactly going to come out in the next 13 minutes or so. And then if we hop over into, say, our Forex Factory, I just want to kind of run through a couple of other things. We've also got the Fed speaking later this afternoon, as well as ISM services coming out at around 6 p.m. So there's quite a lot coming in today. Make sure you guys get your questions through. We are obviously running our competition as normal per every sort of session we have been doing for the last couple of weeks. So I'm super excited to be going through this with you guys. I'm quite interested to see how this NFP data result is actually going to come out on Friday. We all know last month we had a bit of a miss, and that was due mainly to the sort of hurricanes that were happening in Florida. So there was a lot of unaccounted for jobs that were created and sort of, in effect through that time period. So they are actually forecasting around 218,000 jobs to come in this month. So that's obviously quite a big sort of increase from the previous month. However, it is quite nice to kind of rather cross compare the two previous months in terms of their actuals rather than say what actually happened in terms of the sort of floods, etc. So let's not spend too much time on the fundamentals. I'll just keep a close eye on the clock because we do have around, say, 12 minutes or so before that ADP result comes out. So I'm expecting a bit of momentum and movement within the dollar index itself, which will obviously have a bit of an impact on the way in which our cryptocurrencies obviously play out too. Now, if we have a look at, say, the altcoin space at this moment in time, there's obviously quite a few things that are quite interesting, and I thought will be quite key to go over today's session. So talking of a couple of things. So right now we've got our total market cap actually sitting at around 3.5 trillion. Now that is the highest we've actually seen the total market cap for cryptocurrencies in quite some time. Our previous all-time high was actually sitting at around 3 trillion. So we've moved into, say, new territory. We've moved into, say, price discovery areas. Now, this obviously includes all cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., in this total market cap. And if you guys did not know how to find this, it's actually quite easy. You can just type in the ticker name total. It'll come up with a couple of options. So you've got your total crypto market cap. Then you have a couple of options where you can have excluding BTC and ETH, as well as just excluding BTC on its own. So those are a couple of options that you can look at. So when sort of analyzing, say, the total market cap as well as Bitcoin itself, you'll see actually quite closely how these two charts are very much in alignment. They look very similar, and that pretty much is kind of the indication that we get from total market cap, where we see Bitcoin kind of making up majority of that holding when it comes to that actual sort of index, if you want to call it. So if we have a look at, say, the total market cap excluding, say, Bitcoin, you can see there that you're around $1.55 trillion versus, say, the total market cap including Bitcoin of 3.45. So BTC is obviously still making up majority of this index. It's sort of showing us where the majority of, say, the funding is sitting. We know how the kind of the seasons play out. We do tend to see a transfer or a flow of money from hands. And what I mean by that, we do tend to see sort of flows coming out of BTC in these periods of time, moving into the likes of altcoins such as either Ethereum, Solana, Dogecoin, Ripple. We've seen Ripple going in the last few weeks. We've also had Cardano, Link, AVAX, and a couple of others. So that's pretty interesting to see. You can see how, actually, funny enough, just including or excluding BTC, we've actually yet to hit previous all-time highs. But if we look at the total market cap, which basically excludes both Ethereum as well as BTC, this is kind of giving us a bit of an indication as to this altcoin season that we look to be moving into right now. And you can actually see there's a bit of divergence between the two. What I mean by that, you can see now quite clearly here that pretty much this total market cap index is showing us that we are breaking into new all-time highs. We've actually just moved into highs now. So I would be quite interested to see if we can move into some sort of price discovery area thereafter. And we all know that when this happens, we do tend to see a lot of, say, our legacy altcoins and altcoins that haven't been moving, say, over the last couple of months or even a year or so already. So we'll start to see momentum picking up a little bit more there. That's where we kind of see this transfer or this flow of ownership into these other cryptocurrencies. So if we have a look at, say, the likes of Link as well as Cardano is actually quite an interesting one. You can see here we still have a bit of momentum, to get to in terms of reaching our previous all-time highs, etc. Now, it's not to say that every single coin is going to make its all-time high or get to its all-time high. We also know that as the years progress, certain supply gets unlocked, so the total market cap may not be the same as what it was in the previous cycle. So if we have a look at the likes of, say, XRP, for example, in the previous cycle we didn't even get to previous all-time highs. We got to around $2 before we kind of slipped back into the 40 cents to 20 cents region. Now, that is also purely because there was a lot more circulation of, say, that specific cryptocurrency in actual supply and moving around. Hence why we don't necessarily sometimes see these older coins that have been around for much longer move into, say, new all-time highs, etc. Now, there were obviously a couple of things around the likes of Ripple, such as the lawsuit. We all know that Gary, the SEC chair Gary, has been kind of told he will be stepping down. We know that Trump coming into presidency, he has made it quite clear that he would like Gary to remove himself from office. So that is where we are also seeing these coins such as Cardano, Stellar, XRP starting to pick up its feet a bit more, because there is, say, that uncertainty risk factor that is now eliminated, and hence why I actually think we are seeing these moves to the upside for these older legacy coins, right? So if you have a look, even if I just bring up DOT, for example, Polkadot was another great one to have a look at today. You can see here that we are seeing some really interesting momentum to the upside, and these are, say, the coins that have been around for a little bit longer. They are, I want to call them, say, our legacy coins, and you can see that there is obviously still great upside potential on some of these coins. However, it is very key to note that some of these coins may not necessarily get to their previous all-time highs purely because of that supply being already majority unlocked. So if we have a look at, say, the likes of Polkadot, we've got some really interesting areas when we start moving up into, say, $24. If we can break through this area over here, so if I drop down onto the weekly time frame, you can see here how we have this internal sort of resistance area here, where a lot of coins were kind of getting trapped, say, around mid-March, especially these older, say, cryptocurrencies that had been around for a little bit longer. So you can start to see how we kind of came into the support area once, twice, 3 times, eventually ran a bit of liquidity before we started to push to the upside. And now we're getting those pushes. So I'd be quite interested to see if we can break through these short-term highs. So you'll see there's a lot of coins. If I have a look now, for example, at Link and AVAX, we have a lot of coins that were kind of pretty much showing us these internal highs. We made this around mid-March this year, where we kind of saw a little bit of a sell-off, and now some of these coins are obviously starting to pick up their feet and push through these areas. Another one that was quite interesting was Sand. Obviously, you can see now how pretty much the different categories and sectors within cryptocurrency are all starting to pick up their feet. So you've got your layer ones, you've got your AI coins, you've got gaming coins, you've got DeFi. Everything is starting to kind of pick up its feet again and say the more traditional altcoin space, which is not necessarily looking at, say, the major coins such as BTC, Ethereum, Solana, Ripple, etc. So we're seeing these internal breaks, and this is obviously giving us great opportunity to try and capitalize on trades going higher and kind of jumping on the bandwagon in terms of volatility. So I'm quite interested to see if we can continue with some of these coins. One that I found really interesting actually is still Solana. I'm really curious to see if the momentum can kind of hang on. I would definitely say that in terms of, say, your less traditional altcoins, Dogecoin is definitely leading the way. We've seen some nice upside potential and momentum already. We've got all-time high sitting at around 73 cents, currently trading at around 41 cents. So there is still potential upside. Obviously, with that being said, when you start to see cryptos moving such as this, where you've got 400 to 500% returns within a short period of time, it's also very key to kind of take partials during this time, lock in some profits if there is short-term pullbacks. We know when BTC moves, say, 5 to 10% down in, say, a bull market environment, that the altcoins kind of have a bit more impact on this, and you tend to see them moving 30-40% down. So you just need to be able to kind of stomach this sort of these swings. But with that being said, it is also important to note that when we do start to push to, say, these new highs, especially within, say, the year, and we are seeing coins, even for example such as XRP, moving around 200 to 300% in a couple of weeks, it really does make sense to kind of ensure you are locking in some partials or some profits during that time. You can see that these moves are pretty catapultic to the upside, and not necessarily everything is going to just move to the upside without any potential short-term pullbacks. That is obviously where Prime is really awesome. You can obviously trade both sides of the market. So depending on your risk that you would like to take, you can pretty much bring in different options, whether it be hedging your spot holdings, or whether it just be actual day trading in terms of leverage, etc. So what I like to do is I like to try and leverage and hedge myself. So if I'm holding spot, I like to try and use leverage in the other sense that if I do kind of see some short-term pullbacks, at least my net overall position is still fairly break even, if you want to call it that. So for example, let's say my spot holdings might be decreasing by 20 or 30%, but I am on a leverage short position and I'm actually up on that position. It kind of balances each other out. So that's quite an interesting way you can use leverage, and that's how I like to use the likes of Prime XBT in terms of a leverage function. So if we have a look at some opportunities in terms of, say, price action moving, we've obviously had the likes of XRP, ADA, as well as Link doing some crazy returns in the last couple of weeks. So you start to see the likes of AVAX and a couple of these other AI coins also starting to pick up their feet a bit. Now, obviously, we know that in the beginning of the year, especially with the returns from Nvidia, we started to see a lot of interest coming into these AI coins purely because of the projects that they were involved in. There's obviously a great move towards AI, hence why we were seeing a lot of activity around this, and we saw a lot of momentum in these AI stocks. Maybe not cryptos, maybe not necessarily as much as what we were seeing in our legacy sort of categories such as gaming, DeFi, NFTs, etc. So that's why I say we are starting to see this balance effect. What I mean by that, we are starting to see all altcoins excluding BTC and ETH starting to push higher, starting to move, and that is predominantly when we start to see exchange flows coming out of the likes of BTC or Ethereum or Solana, whatever it may be, and flowing into these smaller cap, mid cap cryptocurrencies, hence why we get these pushes, right? So it's quite an interesting one to have a look at here. AVAX is really interesting. I have been quite interested to see if we can break around this $65 region. So if you start to see areas of interest like this, and you can pretty much have a look here now, let's say, for example, we were to kind of mark this out as our internal descending trend line, you can start to see how we are getting breaks to the upside. And depending on how you would like to position yourself into these positions, I like to kind of use a sort of approach where I can pretty much gather a clear break to the upside, a pullback into, say, discounted areas, and then continuation to the upside. So what I mean by that, I'll actually try and show you a good example. Sand was actually quite a good example. So if I just go on my bar replay function and I just go back to the previous week's data and I bring this up, you can have a look here now on the daily time frame, how once we started to trade into new highs, not necessarily new all-time highs, but what I mean by new highs is we started making new highs for the year. So you can see here we had our predominant high sitting over here at around 82 cents. Now this was from early March 2024 where we made that high. So what I would try and do personally is I try to look on opportunities where I can see some sort of rejection. So for example, if you have a look here now, so I know that price is kind of rejecting itself here. And then what I'm looking to try and do is either capitalize on the break of the structure point over here. Okay, I would then like to have my position either set as a limit or stop order above there. And then because I have a confirmed low sitting over here, that I would then want to try and manage my position so that if price pushes higher, I have a place of, say, support that I can kind of use to my favor. So if we have a look over here, I would look at something like this, and then if we had to play this out quite slowly, you would then start to see our price is now pushing above this area over here. So this is kind of giving me that confirmation that I'm looking for. And now what I can do is I can pretty much do one of two things. This is my low set over here. We've had our break over here. So now I'm looking for this push to the upside. So it looks something like that. And then I'm looking for some sort of retest and continuation back to the upside. So it's very similar to our previous sort of analyses that we did together and trade ideas that we did together. It's really nice when you can have a clear predominant low sitting like this. Then I know that my stop loss can sit underneath this sort of level over here. And I'm protected against, say, any momentum to the downside in the event if we start to see price decrease a bit. So let's jump quickly back to the ADP results. I think they have already come out. So we actually had ADP come in at 146,000 jobs versus the forecasted of 152,000. So slightly down from previous month as well as the forecast. So I'm quite interested to have a look at how the dollar index is reacting to that and cryptos in general. We are starting to see a little bit of a pullback. If we have a look at DXY over here, DXY on the daily seems to be pushing higher. So that is quite interesting. I am not really expecting too much volatility from this sort of announcement. I would be actually more interested to see the actual NFP data results coming out on Friday. So we are going to obviously need to wait on that before seeing how the labor market is obviously reacting to the current events of Trump coming into play, as well as the interest rate decision from the Fed that is coming up in December. So let's keep our eyes out on that. We've also then got later today the ISM services PMI. So I'm expecting maybe a bit of volatility to kind of pick up again in New York's trading session. But let's get back to Sand and what I was trying to show you on the cryptocurrency side of things. So this is actually quite an awesome opportunity or play that I would like to kind of actually show you how you can execute something like this on the Prime XBT platform. And it's pretty simple, right? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to do one of two things, right? So you're trying to find this extended high where we potentially might push to, and then we're trying to look for this extended sort of pullback and then continuation to the upside, right? And it might look something like this. Let's say we push into around $1.25 and we have our low at, say, at around 57 cents. Then I would look for some sort of pullback, and I would like to actually then mark out my Fibonacci tool looking something like this. So basically what I'm trying to kind of capitalize on is these flips and structure breaks. So when we get those confirmed structure breaks, and we get the momentum shift to the upside, I would then want to either look for, say, an entry on the 50% level like that. But I know now what I potentially might do is I would try and anticipate, say, this break and this continuation. So I would actually want to try look for an entry, say, over here. You can actually see how we are pushing higher still in this moment in time. So it might not necessarily mean that we'll get a entry. However, those stop orders come into play really well in these situations where you can pretty much already start to see. So for what I mean by that, if we quickly just zoom back 1 or 2 days. So basically what I mean by that is if this is my confirmed low and price starts to push higher over here and continues to push higher over here, and I would like to get entered into this order on a buy stop sort of scenario or situation. So it would look something like this, and then you would get obviously this momentum to the upside. But it's not necessary to say that it's a bad thing that it's already happened. Obviously these are a live trading session, so this would have probably happened today, a little bit early this morning. But in the event that something like this happens, we can also capitalize on, say, the limit side of things. So what I mean by that, if I hop over now into the Prime XBT platform and I show you, so I've obviously got some funding already sitting in here, but if you have not already signed up account, you can do so by going to our main landing page. And then it's pretty simple. Click on the main Prime XBT banner. It'll look something like this. You can then have a couple of options, right? So you've got CFD trading, crypto futures trading, whatever it may be. But when it comes to obviously cryptos and altcoins specifically, I like to make use of the crypto futures section. So what I would need to do is make sure that my wallet account has a bit of funding in there. In order for you to obviously make the necessary deposit, you would need to go and choose the deposit functions that you would want. So for example, if you would like to deposit via crypto or fiat currency, you can do so. And then if you click back on the main Prime XBT banner, it will come up with this sort of dashboard that shows you pretty much a summary of all of your holdings and what you've made deposits into, etc. So if I have a look over here, I can actually simply just click on this function over here and I can choose, say, for example, some USD Tether. I would like to take it from my main account and I would like to move it to, say, my crypto futures account. I would then need to just transfer, say, $100. I go confirm. You will then get a option or a widget function saying transfer has been completed. And once that function has been completed, then the funding will then be sitting in your crypto futures account. So how do you navigate to that? It's pretty easy. You just click on where it says crypto futures over here. It will then pop up with a function that looks something like this. And this is pretty much our widget. So if you have a look over here, this is really awesome and easy to use. So if you have a look over here, this will be pretty much your trading view sort of overview, which you can also do charting and analysis in. I just do it for educational purposes over here. And then I try to show you how you can execute on the platform thereafter. So this is Dogecoin. You would need to go and look for the desired currency. So for example, let's say I want to go and trade SAND. You would then click in the ticker name SAND. It'll pop up something like this. And now you'll have a look. It looks very similar to the chart that we have marked out over here, right? This is obviously just in the default colors. So what I would be looking for is what we've just got now is this confirm break above. And then I'll have my stop loss sitting below this level over here. And what I would need to do is I would want to look for some sort of reaction back down into this level. Okay. And then I would want to see price continue to the upside. But now this is why I like a sort of position like this, because I have a predominant low sitting there at around 56 cents and 56.81 cents. Then I can pretty much use that as my protective stop loss, and I can look to trade this position back to the upside. So what I would need to do in a scenario like this, you would obviously need to make sure you have funding in the account. So if you have a look over here, it will have a option saying how much equity you have in the account, what your available margin is, etc. And then obviously we have a breakdown of all the fees, etc. So you can pretty much have a look over here. And then if you have a look at where my face is currently sitting, you have a couple of options sitting there, which is namely your positions, your orders, fills, history, statistics, as well as your transactions. So those are all the key kind of data points that you need to understand and need to kind of toggle through, because when you enter into a position, that is where those positions are going to be sitting. It's not necessarily that we are going to show you where those transactions are sitting. You're going to have to navigate to them. So for example, if you are wanting to set an order, that's not necessarily going to be a live active position. It's going to be sitting under the orders tab, right? Same as if you click a market execute position, then that'll be sitting under positions, which are showing your live active trades taken, not necessarily an order. Okay, so for today's example, I'm going to be showing you how to set a limit order. So that's going to be a order, well, it's going to sit under your order section, not necessarily your live active positions. So if you have a look over here, we will then go and select limit. I will choose the amount of sand that I'd like to go into, and then I will pretty much choose, say, the cross or the isolated margin type, right? So if you have it set at cross, that means it's going to be fixed at 100x. If you want to change that lower, you need to change it to isolated. Isolated will then give you the function to drag and drop, right? So if you have a look over here, you can choose, so let's say, for example, I want to set it at 5x. So that means I'm going to kind of give a little bit more sort of volume and volatility to this position, so that when my margin is running, I've actually extended it out a bit, so I've got a bit more margin to play with. Hence your returns and your losses can be greater than, say, if you were just going with 1x, right? And then I'll choose the amount that I want to set. And then if you have a look over here, that high is at around 0.860. So I will then need to go change that, something like that, right? And then I will simply go place buy order. I go confirm. And now you'll have a look over here that it will say my order limit is sitting there, right? So that is pretty much a quick summary of how you could potentially capitalize onto something like this. And just keep in mind that this is not going to be an active order. So if you go to your position section, it's not necessarily going to mean that your order is actively running. However, if you go to where it says orders, you'll then be able to see the order that you've set. If you would like to get rid of that order, so for example, if I just move that over here, this is my order function over here. You would then need to just click exit, right? And if you have a look now, that exit, that it'll tell you here that limit order is now canceled and it's no longer actually active and running, right? So if you would like to keep it again, you just simply go click place buy order, and then it'll just sit something like that, right? So now in a nutshell, there are obviously two things that are missing from this position. One being your sort of stop loss as well as your take profit. And in order to do that, you'll need to be a little bit aware in terms of what price action is doing. So we will notify you when that active order is now active, or that pending order is now active. And then when you get the function or the option to go and actually modify your position. So let's say, for example, I show you now, I go place buy order and I click market execute. It'll look something like this. And then you'll see you'll be able to drag and drop both your stop loss as well as your take profit, right? So let's say, for example, I wanted my stop loss to sit below here. I can do that. I go set. And now if I click on it, you'll see it's automatically pulled for me, right? And then pretty much if I want to set a take profit, I would need to do the same thing where I drag and drop the function. So let's say, for example, I wanted to trade this back into 1.5. It would look something like that, okay? Now you can see that that position is actively running. Maybe you don't like the risk. Maybe this is too little risk for you. You want to up it. Then you would need to simply get rid of this position by closing it. And then you can go back into the market by either increasing the amount of lots or futures contracts that you'd like to go into, etc. So that is pretty much in a nutshell how you can use the Prime XBT platform for scenarios where you're getting these breakout opportunities and you have clear sort of lows that you can protect yourself from. So for example, if we had to go through a couple of other charts, if I just want to run through another example, like say for example Link. Now Link, if we have a look here on the weekly time frame, you can see how prices pretty much just push straight through this area, and it's giving you no real opportunity to kind of place a sort of predominant stop loss. So for example, if I was looking to enter onto a break over here, my risk to reward is going to be completely out because I am actually now trying to capitalize on a move with a stop loss way too deep or big in the scenario, right? Whereas if you cross compare that to say the likes of Sand, you can pretty much see how we've got a nice low to protect ourselves from, and we can continue to target higher prices if we get those pullbacks And if price does move against us, we've obviously protected ourselves to a certain risk level. I always try to trade between 1 to 2% of my account value. So let's say, for example, I've got $1,000 sitting there. I'm not necessarily going to be risking more than $10 or whatever it may be, right? And the same can be said if your account size is bigger or less or whatever it may be. So that's pretty much in a nutshell how I would look to capitalize on something like this on Sand. If I have a look at some of the other altcoins, if we have a look at AVAX, we might get some opportunities when we start to break above these areas over here. The only reason I wouldn't want to necessarily start playing long positions from here is because we do run the risk of price popping into these resistance areas and kind of doing something like that, which will then obviously liquidate our positions. So I'd rather wait for confirmed break above these sort of internal highs. So if you have a look here, for example, Cardano is one of those where we just had a really awesome switch to the upside. I don't even think we had a chance to get into this trade. You can pretty much see here, this would have been a lovely opportunity, right? You would have had your stop loss sitting below here, and you would have pretty much wanted to get on an entry if price broke above. So this is what I was saying. Sometimes price moves quite aggressively to the upside when we get to these key psychological levels or resistance levels, right? Or areas of interest, and then you don't necessarily have time to get in the position. So if you have a look over here, in this scenario over here, this actually looks very similar to Sand. So what do I mean by that? This would have been my low over here. This would have been my high. I'm pretty much looking for one of two things. You get your low, you get your push above, and you get your continuation, right? So if you have a look over here, this would be my low, which would be something like this. Okay. And now we trying to trade this move over here to the upside. Okay. So if you have a look here, this is my high over here on the left. Right, so something like that, which is this point over here. So you can see that that's your point there. This is your point over here. And if I draw this out for you over here, you can see it's the same thing. But sometimes when price is sitting, say, down here, you don't necessarily get this pullback into this area. So what I would do in this scenario is I would set a buy sort of stop order, which would sit something like this. And then I know if price moves against me, okay, and it moves like that, there's no risk for me in this position because this position is not going to actually tag me in. It's only going to tag me in if price starts to break to the upside. So for example, here, I would have got tagged in this position. You would then need to come in and manually adjust your stop loss. So you would put your stop loss above here or below here. Okay, and let's say, for example, you were trading a 2-to-1 to the upside. That would look something like this. Right, then you are anticipating this gray box move over here. So you're anticipating something like that. Okay, and then if you have a look, you can see how price pretty much just rockets straight through. And that's sometimes when you're trading volatile pairs such as cryptocurrencies, especially altcoins, you don't have time to get back in and get into the market, right? You might have potentially got an entry over here. So let's say, for example, you had seen the break. You might have got a lower time frame entry on here. However, this is when those buy stop orders come into play, and then you can kind of capitalize on the momentum back to the upside, right? And if you were obviously trading this back into a different high, and if I have a look over here, right? So let's say, for example, I was trading that flip would look something like that, and this would be my target area over here, a little bit higher than 2-to-1, so you're looking at about 3-to-1, right? So that's pretty much in a nutshell how you can capitalize on moves like this when price is starting to move in these key areas. There are a couple of other ones that we can go through. Dogecoin is obviously already gone through. ADA already gone through. Link, we are kind of actually seeing that breakthrough now. So what you could potentially do on something like Link is, depending on where this low forms over here. So I would actually maybe want to see a little bit more of a push over here, and then potentially something like that, right? I wouldn't necessarily use this as my low right now because we could actually use this as our low. So I would rather wait for a bit more clear confirmation. So if you have a look at something like Sand, here you get 2-3 days worth of consolidation or movement out of that area, then you get the move to the upside. Okay, so that's what I'd be looking for. If I was looking on something for Link, I would maybe want to wait another day or so. Maybe price trades back lower down here. This is my low. Okay, and then this is my high over here. And then basically what I'm looking to do is capitalize on price doing this and going higher. Okay, so sometimes you need to just be a bit patient, wait for the sort of really strong low to form. This is on the daily time frame as well, so giving yourself about 1 or 2 days from here is quite key. You then get this really strong low form that looks something like sand, and then you look for, say, that momentum to kind of push back to the upside, and you obviously use that low as your stop loss and your corrective area, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's quite a key little trick that you can use when, say, trading breakouts, especially breakouts that are coming with key areas. It can be used for previous all-time highs. It can be used for all sort of highs during the year. Wherever you see these big liquidity pockets, it's a really easy strategy to kind of capitalize on and use to kind of get into your sort of momentum and push higher, right? So another one actually could be something like DOT. Polkadot is actually reaching closely to that internal high that we made at the beginning of the year. So I'm going to wait to see how price consolidates over here and then look for something to continue to the upside again. So I hope you guys enjoyed that sort of tutorial, a little bit of a strategy breakdown in terms of how you can potentially capitalize on the altcoins, what kind of phase we are sitting in right now. And I hope you guys enjoyed the sessions. Keep bringing in the questions. We'll obviously choose our winner for the prize, and I'll go through the questions and bring in as much as I can. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's session, and I'll catch you guys in next week's one. Thank you.